Hi there, YouTubers, Pewtubers, and Spewtubers. This, in front of your face, is a WK180C Generation 2 from Kodiak Defense, and I've put many hundreds of rounds through it at this point. I don't think I've quite hit 1,000, but I've gotten pretty close to it, and it's been pretty good for the most part. I've got a lot of videos up for you guys to watch in terms of accuracy, magazines, running steel cased ammo, you know, that sort of thing. But I was running it the other week, and my piston broke. And this is the piston, the part that broke, right there. Just snapped right off. So this happens with these guns. I'm not going to say it happens a lot, but it happened with the Generation 1 180C. It has now happened to my Generation 2. I have heard of other people's Generation 2s that it's happened to. And this is also cross-platform. This seems to be a little bit of a design issue with the 180C platform rifles made in Canada in general, because I've heard a number of MCRs that have had the same issue. Remains to be seen if any of the other 180 platforms, but I mean the first two to really hit the market in the mainstream in Canada were the Generation 1 180C and the MCR, and both of them have that issue. Now, there's a little bit of a thing going on. I think there's a little bit of a fanboy camp on two sides of this. On the internet, sometimes you hear people saying, oh, you know, the piston's breaking. That's an MCR issue, that's not a 180C issue. And then you hear the exact opposite on a different part of the internet where people are saying, oh, that's a 180C issue, that's not a MCR issue. And I think the truth is that it's happening with both rifles occasionally. But the good news is it should be a pretty easy thing to fix. So we're going to fix it and you're going to follow it. So I've already cleared this, but you know, I'm going to clear it again just for all of you guys who are all worried about things. So we are clear. There's no magazine in it. La-di-da, blah, blah, blah. So I don't want to take it apart with the bolt open, so I'm not going to. Now I will say this, a snap piston rod is pretty handy for removing pins. There we go. Now we're going to remove, if we can, the bolt carrier and the bolt. Probably a good time to tell you guys that I'm not a gunsmith. I don't know a whole lot about it. I like to tinker. I'm not trained as a gunsmith. Never done any real sort of gunsmithing. I just enjoy tinkering with my guns. So don't take anything I say in this video as advice, and certainly don't do it the way I do it at home. You know, figure out the right way to do it. So I haven't got a clue. I'm going to set that aside right there. So now we've just basically got our upper. I'm going to take the handguard screws off. Now I have not, this is the first time taking this gun apart. I purposefully have not taken apart the Gen 2, other than when I got it. You know, I removed the bolt and bolt carrier, and I you know, removed all the packing lube and all that and re-lubed it, that sort of stuff. But other than that, I haven't taken this apart. This is my first time taking these handguard screws out. Hey guys, don't drop screws on the ground. You'll probably never find them. I luckily just found that one. So with all those removed, I should be able just to take, oh, and there's the spring that got all compressed when it snapped. Now, this is probably a good time to tell everyone, I had a conversation with Kodiak when mine snapped, and they informed me that the #1 reason that these things break, typically, is because we're not cleaning the system. They're recommending to clean this gas system every several hundred rounds. Now, whether that means like 200 or 500, I mean, like, judge for yourself, I guess. But you can see it gets dirty. I mean, I've already got some copper, what do you call that? Copper rust, fouling, whatever you want to call it, on there. And I probably should have cleaned this before I did. Let's see if we can get that gas key off of there, or the regulator, I should say. So this is after, you know, well over 700 rounds, but probably still less than 1,000 rounds, and it's pretty dirty. I probably should have cleaned this before. It explains why, if the rod is prone to snapping when you don't clean it, it explains why mine snapped. So let's put all these parts together. Obviously this part's pretty clean, snapped pretty good. And the gas key is going to need a little bit of cleaning too. So I'm going to pause. I'm just going to clean this. You guys can clean it however you want. I'm just going to use some solvent and clean it up with a brush, and then we'll be back. Okay, we've got the system clean, and I want to go through a couple of things. First of all, like I said, I've got more than 700 rounds through this, less than 1,000. Haven't taken it apart at all. Wanted to see how far it would go. I mean, that's part of the testing process, right? And this thing, you saw it before we paused. It was quite dirty, and it took a pretty significant amount of cleaning, and there was a reasonable amount of copper fouling in there, which I guess you would expect. But we got it clean, and here's how I did it. Now, before I tell you, I'm just going to reiterate, I ain't no gunsmith, and I'm not training you how to clean this thing. I'm simply documenting what I've done to clean it. And if you're gonna do it the way that I did it, and you screw up your gun, you're on your own. And if I screw up my gun, I'm on my own, and I'll report it. I'll make sure you guys know. But I don't think I did. I think I did this pretty safe. But if you go, you know, full jackass on your rifle, and you end up wrecking something while you're cleaning it, and then you're like, oh, but that guy from Ballistically Speaking cleaned it that way. Yeah, up yours, because I'm telling you, don't do it the way I did it. So here's what I found out. So first of all, I mean, using the toothbrush and the solvent, I mean, that was pretty good. It did a pretty good job. We had like caked, you know, gunpowder residue in the front here. We had it on the back. It was all over the place. Copper residue was coming out of these portholes. There was copper residue inside the gas key, which I suppose you would expect. This is different for those of you who don't have a Gen 2, that only have the Gen 1. You can see how they changed the system here. You had that like gas key cap before, and then the tiny little screw that went in. This is a beefier setup for sure on the regulator, and then there's an extension here, and it's all just one piece that fits in there, and it was all fouled up inside here and all that sort of stuff. So let's start with the regulator, because it's in my hand. Here's what I did. I mean, I brushed it with solvent and then wiped it and all that sort of stuff to kind of clean it. To get inside, I just took a 22 caliber bore brush, and I just kind of put it in a little bit. This still has some solvent on it. I don't want to have to re-clean this, so I'm not going to do it. I just kind of stuck it in, like, you know, about to there, and I just twisted it. Just kept rotating it, and that kind of broke everything up in there. And then, if I'm being honest, I just used a freaking Q-tip. And I just put the Q-tip in there and twisted it around, and you know, got a little bit more solvent in there, dried everything out. It seemed to work pretty good for me. If it works good for you, whatever. If you don't decide to do it, then also whatever. For inside the gas block, I used a 25 caliber brush. I think, you know, something a little bit bigger, you know, maybe something like a 6.5 millimeter brush or something like that, which I don't have, would probably work a little bit better. But it goes in all right. Again, there's solvent in here. I don't want to really stick it in there again because I've already cleaned it, but it went in. It's a little bit loose, but I liked it that way.
We'll title your sex tape.
But that allowed me to, you know, more gently kind of brush it around and make sure that I wasn't scraping the inside of the gas block with the steel part of the brush, and just making sure that I was, you know, being gentle, not being a complete knob with it. And then, you know, push some patches through with it. And, you know, obviously they came out super dirty, and I kept pushing them through until they came out relatively clean.
Title of our sex tape.
What?
Your sex tape. What? No.
I cleaned it basically the same way that I would clean a bore. I used a little bit of Q-tip on it as well, and that's how I cleaned it. You can do it that way or not do it that way. It's up to you. Before we put the gun back together, let's take a look at the bolt carrier, because with the number of rounds that I put through here, and also, first of all, you can see I'm running it kind of dry.
Title of my... No! No! No!
On purpose, because I'm testing this rifle. And it has, you know, up until the piston broke, I barely had malfunctions with this thing. I did with a couple of different types of ammo, a couple of different magazines, but they weren't the fault of the gun. You know, it was obvious when I had those malfunctions that it was like, use better ammo than dumpster ammo, and you know, don't use magazines that don't work. And now all we need to do is put it back together. I'm pretty sure everybody knows how to do that. There's lots of tutorials out there with the Generation 1 on how to do that. So I'm going to give you guys a pause, not make you sit through it. And when I get it back together, we're gonna show you the final result. But I am going to put the gas system back together while we're on camera. And I'm realizing that I didn't clean a certain thing here. So this is the nylon bushing that everybody loves to hate or hates to love, or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to be honest. It's looking pretty good, guys. There's a little bit of a, that's probably from when the piston broke, a little bit of a dent there on that nylon bushing. But it's holding up okay. Now I'm going to be honest with you. I have a brass bushing. I have done the brass bushing mod in 2 other Gen 1 rifles and never had any issues whatsoever with it. And I'm probably going to do that with this rifle, but that's going to be after I'm done all these reviews. All right, here goes the piston. Hopefully we don't break this one. That would be nice, huh? And I mean, this is a lot easier than the last one. All I really need to do is just insert the regulator here. Make sure that everything is lined up. And then I screw the regulator in. It's a lot more simple than the Gen 1. I mean, there's a lot less moving parts. Now, I've also heard a lot of people saying that these keep coming loose. And a lot of people are Loctiting them. I even heard someone recently claim on the internet that this is a adjustable gas block, or gas regulator, sorry. It's not. I confirmed that with Kodiak. It is not. The response, quite literally, from Kodiak was, the internet's gonna internet. And then, no, it is not adjustable. I am not Loctiting this right now because I'm still testing it. What I am gonna do is make it pretty tight. You know, I'm gonna pretty reasonably tighten it. And because we're testing it, I don't know if I can get my torque screwdriver in without an extension. Let's see if I can do this. And we're going to put this at 40 inch-pounds. And now I told everybody at the beginning that I'm not using a vise, and now I'm regretting my decisions. Haha. How about that? Oh, maybe if I tighten it instead of loosen it. There we go. You know what, it still seems a bit like I could do better. So let's go with 45 inch-pounds. Just so we can say we know exactly what it was torqued to if it starts to back out on me. There we go. It has backed out on me while I've been testing this. I think I've tightened it 2 times since I've had this rifle. But that was just, you know, the factory tightness. Now we know that exactly 45 inch-pounds of torque has been put on this regulator, and if it backs out again, we'll know that 45 isn't enough. And you know, I'm not ruling out putting Loctite on it in the future, but I want to see if it will stay if we hit a certain amount of inch-pounds. So we can see the piston is riding freely in there. We should be good to go. I'm going to pause the video, going to put the rest of the gun back together. I'm going to take the opportunity to wipe down and re-lube the bolt carrier, and then we'll be back. Just a real quick note, while I was cleaning this, I noticed, and I've heard people say this before, I mean, the firing pin really hammers the shit out of the back of that bolt carrier. You can see it's gouged a bit of an indent, the hammer. That is definitely a thing, and it's happening with my rifle. I don't know if it's ever going to affect the function of the gun. It's possible that it'll just go so far and then we won't have an issue. It's also possible that'll continue to dig deeper, and that will be a problem in the past. I don't know if this is, you know, the bolt carrier steel or whatever, but it's definitely happening with my gun. Not super concerned about it at the moment, but it's a thing that's happening, so I'm mentioning it. Something else I'd like to mention, a lot of people are talking about having to use blue Loctite on their handguard screws as well. So again, just because we're testing this, I'm going to use a torque wrench on it. I'm not going to use Loctite. I'm also going to try not to cross thread it. And I'm going to put these at 35 inch-pounds of torque. And we will know whether that is sufficient. You can see here, so I put it in, well, it was like in this position. Normally, I mean, this is the position to do things, but what's happened is the front of the carrier has dipped down and it's now not sitting properly, and the cam pin is not riding properly in that channel. Now, what I don't know at this point is how to fix it. So I'm going to have to play with it for a bit. And see what I can do here. So anyway, a bit of a strange occurrence at the end there, getting that bolt back in, but we're back together and we're ready for the function test. So, see if I can do this on camera here. Bolt is running. Trigger seems to be working. Bolt hold opens good. Bolt release is good. It's time to get this back on the range. Thanks for joining me while I went through this little journey of learning to properly clean the gas system in the WK180C and how to replace the piston if you didn't clean it and it ended up snapping on you. I guess the lesson of the day is, number one, clean your gun. And number two, maybe put the receiver upside down when you're putting that bolt carrier back in. You might thank yourself for it. And make sure that the cam pin is properly riding in the channel there.